We almost lost Detroit by Gil Scott-Heron here on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. A leaked Pakistani government report has bolstered claims civilian casualties from U.S. drone strikes are far higher than the Obama administration's been willing to admit. The Bureau of Investigative Journalism's released figures from the Pakistani government's own research into casualties from drone attacks in Pakistan's tribal areas. The Pakistani report investigates 75 CIA drone strikes and 5 attacks by NATO between 2006 and 2009. It finds the attacks left at least 746 people dead, including at least 147 civilians, 94 of them children. The Bureau of Investigative Journalism says the figures are likely too low. A previous study, based largely on media reports, found the number of drone-related civilian casualties in Pakistan ranges between 411 and 890. The high number of civilian casualties directly contradicts statements made by senior Obama administration officials and top lawmakers. During CIA Director John Brennan's confirmation hearing earlier this year, Senate Intelligence Committee Chair Dianne Feinstein said the number of civilians killed in drone strikes has been very small.
I've also been attempting to speak publicly about the very low number of civilian casualties that result from such strikes. I have been limited in my ability to do so. But for the past several years, this committee has done significant oversight of the government's conduct of targeted strikes, and the figures we have obtained from the executive branch, which we have done our utmost to verify, confirm that the number of civilian casualties that have resulted from such strikes each year has typically been in the single digits.
Senate Intelligence Committee Chair Dianne Feinstein speaking during the confirmation hearing for CIA Director John Brennan earlier this year. Well, to discuss the newly released numbers, we go to London to Chris Woods, award-winning reporter working with the drones investigation team at the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, which released the report. The Bureau's drone team was awarded the Martha Gellhorn Prize for Journalism last month. I don't know, but we may be the only news organization in the United States who got a studio in London not to talk about the royal baby. I'm not sure. Can you confirm or deny,
And I'm very
Chris?
grateful. Yeah, I'm really grateful to you for that. It's a bit of overload on the royal baby here at the moment. But thanks for having me on to talk about this. I think this really important document that the Bureau has been able to obtain and publish in full, which really does show the inner thinking of Pakistan's government about what was going on with the CIA drone strikes at one of the most intense periods. And as you say, Amy, the CIA has been claiming, we heard Dianne Feinstein there saying, you know, a tiny number of civilians killed over the entire 9 years of CIA bombing in Pakistan. Well, this document says something entirely different. This says at least 147 civilians, perhaps as high as 220, just in a 3-year period. This is a lot of civilians killed, you know, on the CIA's watch, and this flatly contradicts the claims by both the agency and by the U.S. administration.
Talk about the most significant findings in this report. I should say we are going to talk about children today, though, but we'll talk about children in Pakistan.
I think the most important thing about this, as you know, the work that the Bureau does and people like New America Foundation, the big studies that have taken place in Pakistan, they're often driven by media reports. What's really interesting to me about this document, which was never meant to be published, is that it's driven from the inside. This is from the villages upwards. This is put together by civilian officials in the tribal areas who pull together information from the towns, from the villages, and feed that back up. They're not interested in a political grandstanding. They're simply saying who got killed, what got destroyed, how many were injured, and so on. And all of that information is then collated. So what we've seen emerge here is a completely parallel and independent tracking of civilian deaths in Pakistan, in the US drone strikes, which pretty closely match where the numbers seem to be forming now, which is in this 400 to 700 civilian deaths over the entire period of the CIA's bombing. So I think it really is an important document. First big document to emerge either from the US or the Pakistan government that's out there in its entirety now.
Last month, we spoke to Jonathan Landay, the senior national security and intelligence reporter from the Karachi newspapers, and we asked him to talk about the recent documents he'd obtained about drone strikes in Pakistan.
document showed was that in many cases, the CIA actually wasn't sure or didn't know who they were targeting. They were targeting unknown, quote-unquote, militants. They were going after, quote-unquote, other militants, foreign extremists. But it was quite evident from their own estimates of the number of casualties that were being caused in these drone strikes that hundreds of people who they suspected of being militants were being killed in these drone strikes. And the documents that I concentrated on showed charted most of the drone strikes in the tribal areas over a period of a year that stretched from September of 2010 to September of 2011, which was the height of the drone strikes. And, you know, almost a quarter, I believe, and I'm reaching back now, of those drone strikes were targeted against non-Al-Qaeda groups. And so it showed that, as I said, that the administration had been not telling or fully disclosing who it was who was targeted, who were being targeted.
Respond to that, Chris Woods.
I think Jonathan's report was absolutely outstanding last month, and if you like, this Pakistan document is the opposite side of that same coin. You know, Jonathan's saying, who are these mystery people that the CIA was killing? It didn't know who they were. Well, even into 2010, 2011, the Bureau's work and the work of others has shown consistently that a lot of those people that the CIA was classifying as unknown militants were civilians. A lot of them military-age males, but they were civilians by everybody's definition. But many of them, women and children, particularly in the earlier stages of the campaign. It's a real shame that Jonathan hasn't been able to yet publish in full the leaked documents that he was able to obtain. We're very, very keen to be able to cross-reference that material against the findings of the Bureau and others out there in the field, but I think that's something we're going to have to wait on in the present climate in the US, this concern around leaked documents and so on. But yeah, the two documents are the opposite sides of the same coin. On one hand, you have CIA saying, well, we're killing militants, we don't know who they are. On the other hand, the Pakistan government secretly saying, oh, they're killing a lot of civilians.
Talk more about what the Pakistani government report does not say, Chris.
There are some really interesting omissions. So there are some strikes that are just missing. So for some reason, all of 2007 is missing. There were only 4 or 5 strikes that year. It's not a significant number, but it's a strange omission. They only started in 2006, so the very small number of strikes in 2004 and 2005 are missing. Fascinatingly, there is no naming of individuals, whether civilian or militant. And some very big name militant leaders were killed in some of these strikes. For example, Baitullah Masood, leader of the Pakistan Taliban, who was killed back in August 2009. You read the entry in this Pakistan document, which you can find online on the Bureau's website, by the way. We published it in full there. No reference at all to the fact that one of the most dangerous men in Pakistan at that time, an existential threat to the people of Pakistan, had been killed. It just says 1 woman killed, 1 man killed, and it leaves it at that. It's a very strange document from that point of view. Also missing, and this is where I think it gets really interesting, is when we get into Obama's first year in 2009, civilian deaths disappear from the record. Now, partly that's because the document ends at the end of that year, and some of these investigations were clearly still ongoing. But we found examples where we know the civilian administration of the tribal areas in Pakistan knew that civilians had died. In fact, there are documents showing that. But somehow and for some reason, those records of civilian deaths under Obama just slide away from the record. So they're just not there for 2009, and we don't really have a good explanation as to why that is. So some really curious omissions, but otherwise, you know, I think a very important document. And it just adds to this growing canon of publicly available evidence that says, you know what, this claim that CIA killed 50 to 60 civilians in Pakistan, it just doesn't add up. It doesn't add up at all. And really all of the questioning needs, in my view, to be focusing back on CIA right now. They are the holders of the key information that we need to be hearing. Who did they kill? When did they kill them? Why did they kill them? And these are the answers I think we really need now.